Bismillah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. You're listening to microbiology lesson on aspects of biotechnology in microbial ecology. The topic's title is a mouthful, but essentially we are aiming for two outcomes. The first is that you can describe what biotechnology is and talk about factors influencing biotechnology. And the second is you have a clear idea, at least more clear than before learning this, on the relationship between microorganisms, technology, and ecology. I've arranged the contents into four subtopics. Number one is the most important, where we formulate what we understand about biotechnology. Then number two, three, four, we look at concrete examples of how we apply biotechnology. In number two, we look at microorganisms and their ecological impacts related to pollution. Number three, the role of microorganisms in energy technology. And number four, their role in biocontrol. Like what I've taught you previously, when you want to talk about a topic to someone, it's a good idea to clarify the concept to yourself and to that someone. In this case, we talk about biotechnology. So we can devise a long definition saying biotechnology is the use of biological systems or biomolecular processes in developing applications such as services, products, or procedures that benefit human beings and the environment. You got that? So here's what I mean. There are three components to how I view biotechnology. Number one is the what. Number two is the how. And number three is the why. So what biotechnology consists of is the use of any biological systems or biomolecular processes. Biological systems can be an entire microbial cell, for example. Biomolecular processes, for example, can be just the process of transcription from DNA to RNA. How are they used? They are used in developing applications which can be services, products, and even procedures, like technical steps that are added to scientific research or industrial production. And lastly, why we use biotechnology. What should you think of if you want to have a career in biotechnology? My advice is you lock it in your heart that you only want to involve in biotechnology that benefits human beings and the environment, both of them. You might think that, well, this is obvious, common sense. Why does he mention this at all? Because as you get older, as you study more and live more and observe more, you'll notice how much rubbish, to put it politely, how much rubbish that technologies can do in the name of biotechnology and how devastating they are to the environment and to other human beings. So you, as first year university students, you still probably have that innocence, that touch of innocent naivety when you think of biotechnology. So I'm teaching you these ideals for you to hold tight to that innocence and purity of heart for as long as you can. And at the same time, by understanding higher concepts of biotechnology, you can actually defend biotechnology against people who criticize it unfairly. I had that experience myself when a scholar argued to me that biotechnology is evil. Another great reason I elaborate the definition that way is to broaden your conception of biotechnology so that you don't think biotech is something new, something that post-Enlightenment Europeans recently come up with. The earliest historical example that I've come across is the Chinese, 700 years before the Common Era, well over 2,500 years ago. They use moldy soybean curds as antibiotics to treat boils, that skin staphylococcal infection. Another example is Marcus Terentius Varro, who died a couple of decades before Christ. He was an incredible Roman scholar. He integrated microbiological principles with town planning. For instance, he taught other Romans to avoid marshlands as part of the construction decisions to reduce infectious diseases. In India, 11th century, Indians used artificial selections in agriculture, indicating an early genetic understanding, or at least the effects of genetic understanding on plant growth. Around the same time, in Persia, ancient Iran, a doctor named Ibn Sina proposed tuberculosis as infectious when European doctors thought it was hereditary. So Ibn Sina improved the treatment procedures based on that understanding. In the Ottoman Empire, now Turkey, they had immunization practice called variolation, which is vaccination against smallpox. Lady Mary Montagu, who was a poet and author, she lived in the Ottoman Empire territory and wrote about the immunization practice. She even tested the vaccination on her own daughter. Later, her writings were studied by Edward Jenner. So this is the Edward Jenner who you usually read as the father of vaccination, or even sometimes the father of immunology. So science students who read those textbooks wouldn't know about Lady Montagu, or that the Ottomans had been vaccinating people, or that the Indians and the Chinese had been doing the same before them. Often, if you study the history of your field, you're going to discover how different the historical narrative is compared to the popular literature. Today, biotechnology usually manifests as part of multidisciplinary efforts. It is combined with the digital technology, cybernetics, and physical technology. It is part of the fourth industrial revolution, which I discussed in the microbial applications in industry. I'll leave that link below. Biotechnology progresses based on a number of factors, so I put them into two categories. The first one is the material or economic. This includes, firstly, the availability of bioresources. For instance, what kind of plant species more common in your country, perhaps the country's main agricultural commodities. So different societies will emphasize more on one biotechnological directions over the others because of that. Secondly, the economic demands. So this can be determined by the bioresource availability that I mentioned just now, or it can be determined by current events. Like when I'm recording this episode, we are in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic. So can you guess what kind of biotechnology is intensively pursued in the past year? Vaccines. Number 3 is the level of knowledge and skills. This is why you are at the uni. That's why good governments develop policies to make education extremely accessible. Because we are hoping that a small number of you will develop the levels of knowledge and skills to progress our biotechnology. The fourth factor is economic wealth. That's the realistic aspect of all this that you won't experience now as an undergraduate student. You are still being protected because you're still in training, but later when you start working, you're going to see it. You're going to see that progress in biotechnology needs enormous investments. And even if you've got the talents, the bioresources, the economic demands, if you don't have access to financial incentives and financial resources, your vision about what sort of biotechnology you want to pursue is not going to become a reality. The cool thing is, some of our global leaders, they understand that. They understand that we can't fully rely on individual governments alone to provide fundings. So they create, for example, they make a coalition called CEPI, CEPI. That is, what was it? Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations. So what they do is they pool money from people like Bill Gates, billionaires, various governments, private companies, private institutions, and they use the hundreds of millions of dollars that were pooled to accelerate certain types of biotechnological progress, especially ones that have global impacts, like vaccine development against COVID pandemics. Now, what that means for you is this. You're going to study hard at university. You're going to develop the best skill set that you can, but don't expect that a career is just waiting for you when you come out, especially if you're not in a wealthy country, because good jobs in biotech might not be there because there is not enough investment in that area at that particular time. So while you're studying at uni, prepare yourself with the possibility of having to move to another country later or to make a lateral move into a career that's different than what you're studying. Okay? Prepare for that flexibility of mind. All right. The second category that affects biotechnology is the cultural and spiritual factors. This is a deeper point and perhaps more crucial than the ones I mentioned just now, because it helps you understand why one biotechnology will progress more than the other, even if the society has got the wealth necessary to progress either. For this course, I'll keep the point very introductory, very simplified. You might have a chance to study this deeper in future courses like philosophy of science. But for now, I just want to give you guys an awareness of the underlying issues and awareness that there's an entire ocean under the surface of the water, under what scientists and biotechnologists do. So, if you go deeper, progress in biotechnology boils down to how individual scientists view the relationship between science and nature. And over time, that accumulates and creates a cultural force. So I'm going to give you two views that are opposite to each other. Now, mind you, these are not the only two views that exist in philosophy of science, of course. There are many of them. I just give you these two. The first one is expressed by the great philosopher of science, Francis Bacon. His influence on how to think about science have shaped Western scientific development for hundreds of years, right? Bacon writes that nature should be put in constraint by our hand. And then we vex nature, which has been translated as we should harass nature, irritate nature, even torture nature, so we can get science, so that nature will be forced to reveal her scientific secrets. So that's one way how you can relate to science, technology, and nature. Here's the second one. This one is by Syed Hussein Nasr. So Prof. Nasr is the teacher of my teacher, Prof. Osman Bakar. Prof. Nasr did his master's in physics at MIT, and later he did his PhD in history of science at Harvard. He graduated with a PhD when he was just 25 years old. Amazing. He also understands English, Arabic, French, German. So, yeah, a polymath. Compared to Bacon, Nasr emphasizes that our relationship with nature is as a caretaker, custodian of nature, not her owner. And our role in science is to be the channel of grace for nature. We don't torture nature to reveal her secrets. So if a biotechnology is good for you but bad for nature, we reject it. But why do we reject it, right? So scholars like Bacon and Nasr, they lay out the metaphysics of why their approach is the right way to view reality and to practice science. Okay, so but don't worry about those things for now. I just want you to be aware of, I just want you to reflect on these two simplified views. So these are ways of looking at science in general and ways of looking at biotechnology in particular, because biotechnology is about our relationship with nature. And now that you're aware of these, when you see what scientists or bioentrepreneurs are doing, not what they say, mind you, not what they put in their corporate adverts, but what they are doing. So when you see what they are doing, try to sense what kind of worldviews they hold with regard to our relationship with nature, because that will inform their decision-making process. it will drive their directions of biotechnology. And then you can decide whether you want to be part of it. All right, that's it for now. We're done exploring some higher concepts related to biotechnology. In the next episode, we'll go down to the ground to see some specific biotechs. So keep on reading, keep on learning. Barakallahu li wa lakum. Wassalamu alaikum warahmatullah.